The great room fell silent as Henry Wallace entered. His footsteps echoed against the polished stone floor. 27 pairs of alien eyes followed his movement. Some blinked from the sides of elongated heads. Others gleamed from within heavy ridges of scale and bone. The humans had arrived. Ambassador Wallace of Earth announced the Chamber I in 34 languages, representing the United Earth government at this galactic conclave. Henry straightened his blue uniform jacket and kept his face neutral. 6 months of training had prepared him for this moment. Earth had achieved reliable interstellar travel just 3 years ago. First contact came 8 months later. Now, in 2157, humanity stood before the gathered powers of known space. "We welcome Earth to these proceedings," said Vox Maroon, the Xalarian representative. His skin shimmered with iridescent patterns that humans had learned indicated formal speech. "Though we note your civilization's youth among spacefaring species." Henry nodded respectfully. "Youth brings fresh perspective, High Counselor." Behind him, Lisa Murray made a small note on her tablet. As Earth's chief diplomat, she had studied every scrap of information about the Conclave's protocols. She noticed the slight ripple of surprise that passed through the alien delegates at Henry's response. "Indeed," replied Vox Maroon, his skin patterns shifting to something Lisa hadn't seen before. "The Conclave has observed your rapid technological growth with great interest." What he didn't say, what everyone in the room knew, was that human advancement had frightened many Conclave members. Earth had compressed 1,000 years of expected development into less than 2 centuries. The meeting continued for hours. Representatives from each species addressed the human delegation. Some seemed curious, others cautious. The Drell, insectoid beings with complex mathematical minds, questioned Henry about Earth's quantum computing capabilities. The Volus, methane breathers whose environmental suits hissed with each word, inquired about human resource management. During a brief recess, Lisa approached Henry in their private chamber. "They're testing us," she said quietly. "The Xalarians especially seem concerned about our adaptability." Henry sipped water from a glass. "I picked up on that too. Did you see how they reacted when I mentioned our terraforming projects?" Lisa nodded, almost like they were offended, as if changing planets to suit our needs was somehow wrong. Yet the historical records they provided show the Xalarians terraformed 6 worlds in their early expansion. A soft tone indicated the recess was ending. As they returned to the chamber, the atmosphere had shifted. The alien delegates had clearly been discussing Earth during the break. Vox Maroon stood at the center of the chamber. "The Conclave has deliberated and proposes terms for Earth's probationary membership." The terms appeared on Henry's tablet. His expression remained diplomatic, but Lisa could see tension in his shoulders. The restrictions were severe: limited colonial expansion, technology sharing requirements, restricted military development, and substantial protection fees to the Conclave. "These terms seem rather one-sided," Henry observed. "They are generous for a species so new to the galactic community," replied Vox Maroon. "Your protection and guidance are our primary concerns." Lisa caught Henry's eye and gave a subtle nod. Their instructions were clear: secure Earth's place at the table, even if initial terms were unfavorable. They could negotiate better conditions once established. "Earth accepts these provisional terms," Henry announced. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Several delegates seemed surprised at the easy acceptance. Vox Maroon's skin patterns settled into a configuration that Lisa recognized as satisfaction. As the formal proceedings concluded, a small Drell representative approached Lisa. "Your people adapt quickly," the alien observed, multifaceted eyes reflecting the chamber lights. "Perhaps too quickly for some here." "Is adaptability not valued in the Conclave?" Lisa asked. "Everything has its proper pace," the Drell replied. "Those who move too quickly often stumble into difficulties." Later, as Earth's delegation prepared to return home with news of their agreement, Henry looked out at the glittering expanse of the Conclave station. "They're underestimating us," he said softly. Lisa joined him at the viewport. "Yes," she agreed. I believe they are. 5 years passed. Humanity had spread to 7 colony worlds. Ships bearing the Earth flag traveled established trade routes. On the surface, Earth's integration into the galactic conclave seemed successful. But beneath this appearance, tensions grew. Kate Johnson stood on a ridge overlooking New Haven Colony's eastern valley. Through her binoculars, she watched alien harvesting machines strip mining the hillside. Her uniform marked her as a military officer of Earth's colonial defense. "They're taking double the agreed amount," said the young lieutenant beside her. Again. Kate lowered her binoculars. "Document everything. Send the feeds directly to my secure channel." Back at the command center, Kate reviewed the evidence. This wasn't the first violation. For 3 years, conclave ships had taken more than their share from human colonies. Earth paid heavy protection fees, yet received little actual protection. "Commander Johnson," a voice called from the doorway. Paul Garcia entered, carrying a small device. As New Haven's lead engineer, he had been working on something special. "Is it ready?" Kate asked. Paul nodded. "Tested it this morning. The conclave sensors didn't detect a thing." He set the device on the table. It looked simple, just a small metal box with a few indicators. But inside was something revolutionary. Stealth technology that could hide human activities from conclave monitoring systems. "Mass production begins next week," Paul said. "We'll be able to track their movements without them knowing." Kate smiled for the first time in days. "Good work. Ambassador Wallace needs all the evidence we can gather." On Earth, Henry Wallace prepared for another conclave meeting. The initial excitement of joining the galactic community had faded. Reality had set in. Earth's economy strained under conclave demands. Colonies struggled with restrictions. The guidance promised by the conclave had proven to be control, not partnership. Lisa Murray entered his office with a data tablet. The reports from New Haven came in. Commander Johnson confirmed what we suspected. Henry reviewed the files. Illegal resource harvesting, technology restrictions, military limitations. The evidence painted a clear picture. Earth wasn't being welcomed. It was being exploited. "Add it to the presentation," Henry said. "The conclave needs to address this." 3 days later, in the great chamber of the conclave station, Henry stood before the alien representatives. 5 years had added gray to his hair and lines to his face. "Esteemed representatives," he began, "Earth brings serious concerns to this assembly. The evidence from Earth's colonies displayed on the chamber screens. Illegal harvesting operations, restricted zones where human ships were denied access, technology that was promised but never delivered. These actions violate our membership agreement," Henry stated firmly. Vox Maroon, still the Solarian representative, made a dismissive gesture. His skin patterns showed what Lisa had learned to recognize as contempt. "Your interpretation of the agreement is flawed," he said. "The conclave determines appropriate resource allocation. Your colony's development must be managed for the greater stability of galactic society." Other representatives nodded in agreement. A few looked uncomfortable, but none spoke in Earth's defense. "We request a formal review of these practices," Henry insisted. "Request denied," Vox Maroon replied simply. "The current arrangements stand." Later, in their private chamber, Lisa found Henry staring out at the stars. "They won't even discuss it," he said quietly. 5 years, and we're still seen as children to be managed, not equals to be respected." Lisa joined him at the viewport. The smaller conclave species face similar treatment. "The Iridians sent a private message supporting our complaints, but they're afraid to speak publicly." "Fear keeps the conclave in line," Henry observed. "But humans don't respond well to fear. Not long term." "What do we do now?" Lisa asked. Henry turned to her, his expression hardened by years of diplomatic failures. "We've tried their way. Now we document everything, build our case, and prepare for what comes next." "And what is that?" "The day when humans leave the negotiation table," Henry replied. "Earth needs to know what happens then." As their ship departed the conclave station, Neither noticed the small drill vessel that scanned their communications before quietly moving away. The Emergency Council chamber on Earth buzzed with tension. 20 world leaders and military commanders gathered around the circular table. President Susan Miller stood at the head, her expression grave. "Ambassador Wallace has presented the conclave's response to our concerns," she said, or rather, their lack of response. Holographic displays showed data from Earth's colonies, resource depletion, restricted zones, technology embargoes. The evidence was overwhelming. Vice Admiral Alan Carter spoke next. His weathered face reflected 30 years of military service. "We have options, but limited time. The conclave has increased patrols near our outer colonies." "Are you suggesting military action?" asked a council member. Alan shook his head. "Not yet, but we should prepare while continuing diplomatic efforts. The conclave doesn't respect weakness." Across the room, Dr. Olivia Wright raised her hand. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, she had studied conclave species for years. "There's something you should see," she said. Her slim fingers activated a display. This data comes from Paul Garcia's stealth monitors. The display showed conclave communications, translated into English, private messages between Solarian leaders. "They're afraid of us," Olivia explained. "Not of our current capabilities, but of our potential. Human adaptability and creativity develop faster than any species they've encountered." President Miller frowned. "They offered membership to control us, not welcome us." "Precisely," Olivia agreed. "And now they're discussing new restrictions." The room fell silent as she displayed the Solarian proposal: limits on human expansion, caps on technology development, and genetic monitoring of human populations. "This crosses every line," the president said quietly. 3 weeks later, Henry Wallace and Lisa Murray returned to the conclave station. This time, they carried Earth's final diplomatic effort. The Great Chamber seemed colder than before. Representatives from 27 species watched as Henry took his place at the speaker's position. "The United Earth Government thanks the conclave for this audience," he began. His voice was formal, hiding the anger beneath. "Earth wishes to address serious concerns about our relationship." Vox Maroon's skin patterns showed impatience. "The conclave has already ruled on your complaints, Ambassador." "This is not about past complaints," Henry replied. "This is about future cooperation." He presented data showing mutual benefits of equal partnership between Earth and the conclave. Trade opportunities, scientific exchange, cultural enrichment. Together, we could accomplish more than. Vox Maroon interrupted. "The conclave has new requirements for Earth's continued membership." The terms appeared on the chamber displays. They matched what Olivia had discovered weeks earlier, with one addition. Earth would surrender its advanced propulsion technology to conclave control. Lisa Murray watched the other representatives. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed pleased. None objected. "These terms are unacceptable," Henry stated flatly. "They are necessary," Vox Maroon countered. "Your species advances too rapidly for stability. The conclave must maintain order." Henry looked around the chamber. "And if Earth refuses, then your probationary status will be revoked. Your colonies will be placed under direct conclave administration for your own protection." Henry and Lisa shared a glance. This moment had been anticipated. In their private quarters, a secure quantum channel connected to Earth. President Miller received the conclave's terms in real time. In the presidential office on Earth, Susan Miller made the decision that would change human history. She pressed a button on her desk. "Ambassador Wallace," she said, her voice clear through the secure channel. "Implement departure protocol." Henry took a deep breath and faced the conclave one last time. "The United Earth Government thanks the conclave for its candor," he announced formally. "After careful consideration of these terms, humanity has reached a decision." The chamber grew still. Effective immediately, Earth withdraws from all negotiations with the Galactic Conclave. Confusion spread through the alien representatives. This wasn't a response they had anticipated. "You cannot simply withdraw," Vox Maroon said. There are procedures, obligations. Watch us, Henry replied. Silence spread across human space. 3 months after Earth's withdrawal from the conclave, communication with alien species ceased. Earth ships vanished from common trade routes. Human colonies went quiet. To the wider galaxy, it seemed humanity had simply turned inward. But behind this veil of silence, humanity worked. Defense Secretary Jack Nelson stood in the massive underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. Hundreds of engineers and military personnel moved with purpose around him. Screens displayed the status of projects across Earth and its colonies. How soon until the Jupiter shipyards are operational? He asked his assistant. 2 weeks ahead of schedule, sir. Mars production is already at full capacity. Jack nodded. The military buildup was proceeding faster than anyone had expected. Without conclave restrictions, human innovation flourished. Technologies that had been held back now developed rapidly. In a hidden base in the Oort cloud, Colonial Administrator Daniel White supervised the construction of stealth outposts. These would serve as forward bases beyond conclave territory, undetectable by alien sensors. Status report on the Alpha Centauri network, he requested. His operations officer brought up a holographic display. Sensors are deployed and active, sir. We now have eyes on all conclave traffic within 20 light-years of Sol. Daniel smiled slightly. And they have no idea we're watching. Meanwhile, Paul Garcia had expanded his stealth technology. In an orbital laboratory above Venus, he led a team of engineers integrating the system into everything from communication devices to warships. The beautiful thing, he explained to a group of military officers, is that it doesn't just hide us. It can selectively reveal false information. He demonstrated on a nearby screen, showing how a small scout ship could appear as a merchant vessel, or how a fleet could seem like a minor patrol. The conclave relies too heavily on their sensor technology, Paul said. They've forgotten how to verify with their own eyes. In her research facility on Luna, Dr. Olivia Wright analyzed conclave technology captured over the years. Her team had made remarkable discoveries. Their systems are surprisingly vulnerable, she told Vice Admiral Carter during his inspection tour. They've had no real competition for centuries. Their security is built on reputation, not capability. Alan studied the schematics she displayed. Can we exploit these weaknesses? Olivia nodded. We already have. These modules can disrupt their communication networks. These can temporarily disable their weapons without destroying ships. Non-lethal options, Alan used. Good. We don't want a war of extermination. Just a demonstration of capability. Olivia agreed. Throughout human space, preparations continued in disciplined silence. Each colony became a fortress while appearing inactive to outside observers. Paul's stealth systems masked the movement of ships and resources. Earth's industrial capacity, freed from conclave limitations, produced at unprecedented rates. In the conclave chamber, representatives discussed the human situation with growing unease. They'd been silent for 6 months, said the Volus representative. No trade, no communication. Our monitoring stations report minimal activity in their systems. Vox Maroon's skin patterns showed dismissal. They sulk like children. They will return when their colonies begin to suffer without conclave support. A Drell representative shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps we should send envoys to open new discussions. More favorable terms might. We do not negotiate with lesser species, Vox Maroon interrupted. They will learn their place. Unknown to the conclave, their entire conversation was being observed. Through technologies they had deemed impossible for humans to develop, every word reached Earth's leadership. President Susan Miller sat in the war room with her advisors, listening to the conclave's dismissal of humanity. They still don't understand, she said quietly. Jack Nelson checked the status reports flowing in from across human space. The defense grid is at 90%. Colonial forces are positioned. Garcia's stealth fleet is in place. Susan nodded. And the Lighthouse Protocol. Ready, Madam President. Alan Carter confirmed. On your command. Susan looked at the star map showing human space surrounded by the vast conclave territory. Let them come to us, she decided. When they do, we'll be ready. 3 years of silence ended on a Tuesday. Earth's long-range sensors detected the conclave fleet first. 50 ships moving in formation toward the Sol system. At their center, the massive Solarian command vessel led the way. Admiral Alan Carter stood on the bridge of the EDS Horizon, Earth's newest defense vessel. Around him, crew members worked with quiet efficiency. They're following the old trade route, his tactical officer reported. Estimated arrival at Mars orbit in 6 hours. Alan nodded. Any communication? Just now, sir. They're broadcasting an ultimatum on all frequencies. The message appeared on the main screen. It was simple and direct. Earth would return to conclave authority or face appropriate measures. Inform the President, Alan ordered. Activate Defense Grid Alpha. All ships to stealth mode. Across the Sol system, human vessels vanished from conclave sensors. Orbital platforms around Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies went dark. To the approaching fleet, it appeared that humanity was defenseless. In her office, President Miller received the news calmly. They'd finally decided to act, she said to Jack Nelson. Implement Phase 1. Meanwhile, Lisa Murray prepared for her role. After years of silence, she would again serve as humanity's voice. But this time, the conversation would be different. As the conclave fleet approached Mars orbit, they maintained tight formation. Their sensors showed no human military response, exactly as they expected. On the bridge of the Solarian command ship, Fleet Commander Zex Valen watched with satisfaction. Send the final warning, he ordered. They have 1 hour to submit. The conclave ships spread out, weapons systems powering up. They expected surrender. They received something else entirely. Across the fleet, alien systems suddenly displayed warnings. Every targeting computer failed simultaneously. Communication between ships cut out. Engines stalled. What is happening? Demanded Zex Valen, as his bridge crew scrambled to respond. Outside the viewport, points of light appeared around the fleet. Human ships, previously invisible to conclave sensors, decloaked. They had surrounded the alien vessels completely. Admiral Carter's voice came through on all conclave frequencies. Attention conclave fleet. You have entered sovereign human space without permission. Your weapons have been temporarily disabled as a precautionary measure. On Earth, President Miller addressed the conclave leadership via direct transmission. We did not want this confrontation, she stated, but we are prepared for it. The surprise was not limited to the Sol system. Across conclave space, reports flooded in. Human ships appeared near every colony world where they had once lived. The vessels took no hostile action. They simply revealed themselves. On 12 worlds under conclave control, human forces neutralized occupation authorities in coordinated operations. Colonial Administrator White oversaw the liberation from his command center. All colonies reporting success, his aide announced. Minimal casualties on either side. Daniel nodded with satisfaction. Begin Phase 2. The Talarians were stunned. In just 3 years, humans had developed technology that made their ships invisible to detection. They had created weapons that could disable but not destroy. They had established a presence throughout conclave space without anyone noticing. On the command ship, Zex Valen received a communication request from a small human vessel approaching under escort. Who is it? He demanded. Lisa Murray, diplomatic envoy of Earth, came the response. He reluctantly agreed to meet. When Lisa entered his bridge, she carried only a small data device. Earth offers these terms, she said, transferring the document to his system. The terms were simple: equal treatment for humanity and all species, fair resource agreements, and an end to exploitation. The alternative remained unstated but clear. The conclave does not respond to threats, Zex Valen said stiffly. Lisa smiled slightly. This is not a threat. This is a correction of balance. As she spoke, Reports continued to arrive from across conclave space. Smaller member species were beginning to question Solarian leadership. Some openly praised human intervention. "The universe is changing," Lisa told him. "You can change with it, or be left behind." Word spread quickly through the conclave worlds. Humans had not been hiding in fear. They had been preparing. The Solarian-led fleet returned from Earth without a single shot fired, but clearly defeated. The balance of power had shifted. On the Uridian homeworld, crowds gathered in the central plazas. For generations, the bird-like Uridians had suffered under conclave restrictions. Their resources taken, their technology limited, their growth controlled. "No more," declared First Speaker Krell to the assembled crowd. "Today, we follow the human example. Today, we reclaim our independence." Across their star system, Uridian ships disabled conclave monitoring stations. The rebellion had begun. 3 other species, the Drell, the Taurans, and the Vega, soon followed their example. In an emergency session of the conclave, representatives argued bitterly. The chamber that had once been a model of order now echoed with accusations. The Solarians assured us humans were contained. The Tauran representative shouted. Yet they were building forces throughout our territories. Vox Maroon's skin patterns flashed with anger. "This temporary disruption will be addressed. The conclave has maintained order for 1,000 years. We will not be undone by primitives." "Perhaps the primitives have something to teach us," suggested a Drell representative. Several others murmured in agreement. The conclave was fracturing. Old alliances broke as new ones formed. Trade routes that had flowed toward Solarian space for centuries now shifted. Resources moved to human and Iridian markets instead. On New Haven Colony, now free from conclave control, Kate Johnson welcomed a Iridian delegation. The aliens who had once been forbidden to speak with humans now sought alliance. "Your people showed us it was possible," said the Iridian ambassador. "For too long, we accepted our place." Kate nodded. Earth had to learn that lesson too. There's a difference between taking a seat at the table and having a voice. In her research facility, Olivia Wright hosted scientists from 6 different species. Technology that the conclave had restricted was now shared freely. "The Solarians kept us separate for a reason," she explained to President Miller during her visit. "Together, we're finding solutions in days that might have taken decades in isolation." Meanwhile, Jack Nelson reviewed intelligence reports from across former conclave space. "The Solarians are moving military assets to key systems," he told the Security Council. "They're preparing a response." President Miller frowned. "Targeted at us." "Not just us," Jack replied. "Any world that's joined what they're calling the human rebellion. But particularly the Iridians." "The Iridians aren't militarily strong," Alan Carter noted. "They've always relied on conclave protection. Protection that's now gone." Susan Miller's decision was immediate. "We won't let them stand alone. Activate Operation Lighthouse." Throughout conclave space, hidden human bases suddenly revealed themselves. Listening posts, defense platforms, and small outposts that had been established during the 3 years of silence now powered up. In strategic systems, human ships appeared from stealth. On Sailor Prime, the homeworld of the conclave's leaders, the High Council received the reports with shock. "Impossible," said Supreme Leader Kazvorin. "They cannot have built so much, so quickly, without detection." Yet the evidence was undeniable. Humans had established a presence throughout conclave territory, not as an invasion force, but as a web of observation and rapid response. In the Iridian home system, a Solarian battle fleet arrived to restore order. They found 3 human defense vessels already in orbit around the Iridian world. "This is a conclave matter," the Solarian commander transmitted. "Depart immediately." Admiral Carter's response was brief. "The Iridians have requested our assistance. We decline to leave." The standoff lasted 16 hours. Finally, the Solarian fleet withdrew. They could not afford open conflict with humans, Not when human outposts had appeared in hundreds of systems simultaneously. On Earth, President Miller addressed the newly formed Alliance of Independent Worlds. Representatives from Earth, Eurydia, and 6 other formerly subjugated planets attended. Today marks a new chapter in galactic relations, she said, not built on control, but on cooperation. The Calarians refused to accept their diminished status. 2 months after the formation of the Alliance of Independent Worlds, they launched coordinated strikes against human outposts in disputed systems. The long-feared conflict had begun. Admiral Alan Carter's strategy focused on containment rather than conquest. Human and Alliance ships formed defensive lines, protecting civilian worlds while avoiding direct attacks on Solarian territory. "We don't want their worlds," he explained to his captains. "We want them to understand that the old ways are over." The fighting spread across 12 systems. Solarian warships, superior in size and raw power, faced human vessels that outmatched them in speed and adaptability. Neither side could gain a decisive advantage. On the bridge of the EDS horizon, Alan studied the tactical display. "They're learning our patterns too quickly," he said to his executive officer. "We need something unexpected." Back on Earth, Paul Garcia proposed a daring plan. "We've analyzed their command structure," he told the Security Council. "All Solarian military decisions come from a single research facility on their moonbase. That's where they keep their strategic eye." "Can we reach it?" asked Jack Nelson. Paul nodded. "With a small team using our most advanced stealth tech, yes, but we need to know what we're looking for once we're inside." All eyes turned to Olivia Wright. She had spent years studying Solarian technology. "I can guide them remotely," she said, "and I know exactly what we need to find." 3 days later, Paul led a team of 6 specialists on the infiltration mission. Their ship, barely larger than a shuttle, slipped past Solarian defenses using technology that made it nearly undetectable. The moon base was massive, a sprawling complex built into the lunar surface. Paul's team used service tunnels to move deeper into the facility. Olivia's voice guided them through their secure comms. "The main data center should be 2 levels below you," she said. "Their security relies on the belief that no one can reach it undetected, not on internal barriers." As they reached the data center, Paul understood why. The room was enormous, filled with technology far beyond what humans had seen before. But what caught his attention was the wall of historical records. "I'm seeing something strange," he told Olivia as his team downloaded the strategic data. "These look like first contact records, but they're different from what the conclave shared with us." "Get as much as you can," Olivia instructed. "We may not have another chance." The team completed their mission and escaped without detection. It was only when they returned to Alliance space that they understood the significance of what they had found. Olivia's face was grim as she presented the findings to President Miller and the Alliance Council. Representatives from 8 species listened intently. "The Calarians have been manipulating first contact with developing species for over 1,000 years, she explained. "They specifically targeted humanity because of our adaptability. Earth wasn't randomly discovered. We were selected for exploitation." The records showed a pattern. Species with particular traits were approached early in their development. Their growth was guided along paths that made them useful, but not threatening to Solarian dominance. "They've done this dozens of times," Olivia continued. "The Eurydians, the Drell, all of us. We were experiments in controlled development." President Miller's expression hardened. "Can we verify this information is authentic?" "Already confirmed," Jack Nelson replied. "And we have a way to let the entire galaxy know." The plan was simple but effective. Using the communication networks that spanned conclave space, they'd broadcast the Solarian records to every world simultaneously. The truth spread like wildfire. On dozens of planets, populations learned they had been manipulated for centuries. Species that had remained loyal to the conclave now questioned everything. Even on Solarian colony worlds, doubts began to spread. The fighting in the disputed systems slowed, then stopped. Solarian commanders found themselves receiving conflicting orders as their leadership struggled to contain the damage. In the conclave chamber, representatives demanded answers. The carefully maintained order of 1,000 years crumbled in days. Vox Maroon faced the assembly, his skin patterns showing stress never seen before. "These human fabrications are designed to destabilize the galactic community," he insisted. "They are your own records," replied the Drull representative. "And they explain everything." One by one, species formally withdrew from the conclave. The grand alliance that had dominated the galaxy was dissolving, not through war, but through truth. 1 year passed. The great chamber that had once hosted the galactic conclave now served a different purpose. Representatives from 32 species gathered not as rulers and subjects, but as equals. The Galactic Alliance, as it was now called, operated on principles of mutual benefit and respect. Henry Wallace, now older and wiser, stood at the center of the chamber. No longer merely Earth's ambassador, he led the committee drafting the new galactic constitution. "The document before you represents 6 months of work," he told the assembly. "Every member world has contributed. Every voice has been heard. The principles were simple but powerful: equal rights for all sentient species, fair resource sharing, open technological exchange, and mutual defense. No single species would dominate the others." In the audience, Lisa Murray watched with quiet satisfaction. The diplomatic skills she had honed during years of frustration now served to build bridges between formerly isolated species. "I never imagined this outcome when we left the negotiation table," she said to Krell, the Iridian first speaker seated beside her. Krell's feathered crest rippled in what Lisa had learned was amusement. Sometimes the table itself must be replaced, not just those sitting at it. Not all had embraced the new order. The Exilarians had withdrawn to their core systems, refusing to join the alliance. Their influence, once spanning hundreds of worlds, now reached barely a dozen. Their technology, once secretly hoarded, was now freely studied and often improved upon by multi-species research teams. In one such facility, Olivia Wright led scientists from 9 different worlds. Their current project focused on faster-than-light communication that would connect distant star systems more effectively than ever before. The Exilarians knew this was possible, she explained to a young Drull researcher, but kept it theoretical because it would have made their control more difficult. "And now?" asked the Drull. Olivia smiled. "Now we build it together." On the edge of Alliance space, Admiral Alan Carter commanded a peacekeeping force with ships from 12 species. Their mission: to protect developing civilizations from exploitation and guide them toward eventual membership on their own terms. His current assignment brought him to a system where a young species had just achieved their first interstellar flight. Their representatives would soon receive their first official contact from the wider galactic community. No manipulation this time, Alan told his multi-species crew, just honest introduction and the offer of friendship. On Earth, President Miller reviewed reports from across Alliance space. Trade volume had doubled in a year. Scientific breakthroughs occurred weekly. Cultural exchanges flourished as species shared art, music, and philosophy previously kept separate by conclave policies. Jack Nelson entered her office with the latest security update. "The Exilarians are increasing patrols along their borders," he reported. "Some hardliners are calling for a return to the old ways." Susan sighed. "They still don't understand, do they?" "Some do," Jack replied. "We've received requests for asylum from Solarian scientists and civilians. They see the benefits of cooperation." "Grant them," Susan said immediately. "Show them the alternative to dominance is not weakness, but strength of a different kind." Later that evening, Susan joined Lisa Murray on the observation deck of the Earth Government Complex. The night sky above them was filled with ships arriving and departing, vessels from a dozen worlds coming to Earth for trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. "Did you ever imagine this?" Susan asked, gesturing at the busy sky. Lisa considered the question. Not exactly this. I hoped for respect, for fair treatment. I never dreamed we would become the catalyst for galactic transformation. Susan smiled. We didn't set out to change the universe. We just refused to accept our assigned place in it. And that made all the difference, Lisa agreed. Below them, in the public square, humans mingled with visitors from across the Alliance. Children from Earth played games with young Drell and Iridians, learning each other's languages and customs. This is what the Xalarians feared most, Lisa observed, not our weapons or technology, but our ability to bring people together as equals. Susan nodded. When humanity left the negotiation table, we didn't just change our own fate. We showed everyone else they could change theirs too. Above them, the stars gleamed with new possibility.